What's up, guys? Long time no see. Hope everybody's had a good couple weeks. Hope everybody's had some success in the playoffs. Um, I know I have, and of course, the 2 weeks that I don't make videos and put out all the picks and all that stuff, yeah, of course I'd have good luck, right? So it is what it is. You don't have to believe me. I posted some plays in the community chat. If you've been kind of keeping up with that, not all of them, just the ones that I had bet early. Last week, pretty decent. I believe we were 2-1, and actually, you know what? I think I still have the tab up here. So I'm sorry, this was from the wild card week game, so I didn't even post the one last week. Anyways, in the wild card week, went 2-1. The teaser was a Jags +8, Bengals -2.5. That covered. ETN longest rush over 17.5. That also covered. Only one that didn't hit was the long shot, the Donald Parham anytime touchdown +600, and that was about freaking 6 inches away from hitting too. He almost hit the first touchdown of the game. It went off his fingertips. But anyways, that was the wild card weekend. Last weekend had more success. Had the if it's on Twitter as well. If you want to follow me there, it's at ag_sports21. Really just picked the winners, right? We had San Francisco, we had the Eagles, and then we also had the Bengals +6. So all that stuff, everything hit. Honestly, went like 4-0 last week. So anyways, enough of that. That's not what I'm coming here to say. I apologize again. Had not been making the videos as frequently as I had been throughout the regular season. But let's get into it now. We only have really 2 weeks left, right, in the NFL slate. So first game I want to go over is actually the one I don't feel as confident about, and that's the Bengals-Chiefs game. In this one, I was lucky enough to get it early. So when I first took this play, it was I believe Sunday night when they wrapped it up with the Bills-Bengals game. Or whichever one came last, I apologize. It's been a long week already. But whenever this game was cemented in, and we knew it was going to be the Bengals Chiefs, I went out. I got that line early. It was actually Bengals +1 at the time, and I teased that. And this is sort of I know I've been mentioning this throughout the year already or throughout the season, but a lot of you still had not jumped on board. And this has been one of those years where being contrarian, doing everything that the books tell you not to do has paid off pretty decently, more weeks than not, as far as just like going against the grain. And this week I'm doing it again. I teased the total, and a lot of times people will tell you don't tease the totals because it's not enough value in the numbers, and I can almost promise you that has been incorrect this year. I've been working through the numbers. I don't have the full season stats yet, but as soon as I do, I will give you the actual number on that. All I can tell you is that over the last, let's say, 8 weeks or so that I've been doing this, the numbers that I have been telling you are key numbers and totals have been hitting at a more consistent basis. It's been at about 15 to 20% throughout the regular season, and then in the postseason, it's been even more consistent. Obviously, there's fewer games, but the key numbers with totals 41, 44, 47, 51. There's 2 lesser key numbers, and that's 43 and 53. 54 as well, sort of, if you want to throw it in there. So they're all, more or less key numbers, but the big ones, 41, 44, 47, 51. And so it's going to obviously depend on where you're at on the initial total as to how many of these you can get with the spread, with the tease, that is. So initially I took the Bengals. Again, they were at +1, so it jacked them up to +7, and then we got under 53.5. So that 53.5, obviously you got the 41, 44, 47 already under wraps there, but it did also get you the 51 and that 53, again, just kind of that lesser key number. A couple of reasons for the total portion, because if anything, that's what I feel more confident about in this game. If you go back, just look throughout the entire season, and even going back into last season when the Bengals made the Super Bowl, they were an amazing, and I mean an amazing second half defense. The adjustments made were just phenomenal. I believe they only allowed 1 or 2 touchdowns all of last season in the second half, and they're pretty damn close to it this year. They've allowed very few touchdowns. I want to say it's like 4 or less this year, and even that may be pushing. It might be more like 3, but let's just call it 4. Throughout the entire season, they have given up field goals and they have let people, move the ball obviously on them somewhat, but they just don't really give up a lot of touchdowns in that second half. Um, Secondly, though, the game that they actually kind of struggled with stopping the offense was probably the most unexpected one for me, and that was against the Ravens in that wild card round. The Ravens are just a very well put together team, and they are almost specifically made to beat this Bengals team, or at least to give them a run for their money, and they do everything well that the Bengals struggle with, and they know how to kind of put the clamps down on the things the Bengals are good at. Now, the Ravens, again, that's a one-off team that's made very specifically for that reason. So just as an example to show you kind of more or less what I mean, this Bills team that we all thought was an amazing offense scored a total of 3 points in the second half. Their only touchdown obviously coming in the first half. Like I said, the Ravens are the only team that gave them some trouble. The Ravens scored, I believe, a touchdown. We can go into it, but it's really just they scored a touchdown. They should have really scored another one, but the Bengals stopped them on the goal line. Going back here to this Patriots game, the Patriots, let me see what their final score was here. So actually, this Patriots team, they did score 2 offensive late touchdowns here in the fourth quarter. But again, these are touchdowns that the game was already in hand. At this point, I guess if you want to say, they're trying to make a comeback, the Bengals were up 22-0 before the Patriots scored any sort of touchdown, and that was a interception return that initially started. Then it was 2 late fourth quarter touchdowns, kind of in a comeback attempt. And if you go to the week before that, and you look at this Bucs game, it's another example of just how the Bengals kind of handled business in the second half. The first half, all Buccaneers is 17-3 going into halftime, and the Bengals just come out and really put the clamps down on the Buccaneers in the second half. Field goal, touchdown, and then they let up literally 49 seconds left, literally a last minute touchdown to the Buccaneers, which just, again, another throwaway, nothing. So apparently I have given up more touchdowns, I apologize, than I was recalling here. But that being said, still stands, there's really not a whole lot of meaningful items here as far as how often these guys are giving up, big plays that are swinging the game at the end of the halves here. So I'll try to get to this Browns game just to get one more example of what their second halves typically look like. So again, Cleveland 3, and then they have 1 touchdown in the second half. It's just, again, at this point, it's 20-3 when these guys score. So just really not a whole lot of anything. And then the fourth quarter, they just completely shut them down. So what am I getting here with this? Really, the second half of games seems to be the Bengals' time, and that's prior to postseason play. So that's them just on a normal Sunday. They've been ramping that up in the playoffs, like I said, just to kind of come back to what they did last week against the Bills, and then even the week prior with the goal line stand against the Ravens to really kind of shut the door on them. It's been a second half pretty much every week for this Bengals team for that reason, and really because the Chiefs have kind of struggled in the second half anyways with playing normal competition. The Chiefs are one of these teams that like to come out, kind of get a bigger lead to begin with, and then just kind of do what they have to in the second half if at all possible. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think that's the way that this game is going to go for them. It leads to a lot of issues, 1 for the Chiefs, and 2 for that total, because that total of 47.5 really does require that you put up some points in the second half. And while the Chiefs may be able to get some points on them it should be a really long drawn out fight in that second half to gain yards, to get in scoring position, and to get touchdowns instead of field goals. I don't see the Bengals giving up a whole lot of big broken plays like some other defenses have in the past to this Chiefs team. Also, though, again, going back to the tees, the last time these two teams played, the total actually ended at 51. Like I said, again, another key number. And that was with a healthy Mahomes. Now, take that injury for what you want. Some people say it's not as serious as it is or as it looks. Others say that, he's going to be just fine. He's maybe just not as mobile. But if you go back to the first game with the Bengals and the Chiefs this year, Patrick Mahomes, he only had 9 yards rushing, but he did score a touchdown on the ground. And just the threat of him being able to run is enough to at least somewhat adjust your defense. And no, you can't really just play man defense because you can't turn your back on the guy. When he's kind of hobbled, that does change things a little bit. And so if anything, even if that changes one touchdown from a touchdown to a field goal, or just kind of swings things for one play or one drive where they can't get things going because he has to take a sack, but he can't get to that first down marker. It changes a lot, and it changes the way the Bengals are going to play this game. And lastly, the Bengals have come out hot the first couple drives here against the Bills, against the Ravens, and if that continues, and I believe that it will, I fully believe that the Bengals are going to come out in the second half, not just with a hyped up defense, but with an offense who is willing to just run the ball. And you saw it last week. When they get the run game going and they're getting those 4, 5, 6 yards a carry, it is very, very difficult to stop that team from taking these long 5, 6, 7 minute drives. And if that's the case, even if the Bengals only enter the second half up 1 touchdown, and they're able to do that, even if it's a tie game at halftime, it's really difficult to mount a comeback when you're having trouble scoring and the other team is consistently getting the ball for like half a quarter or more on any given drive. So for those reasons, I really like the under, but I like to tease that under only because you are still dealing with two offenses that can get going at pretty much any time. If the Bengals need a last minute drive, obviously their offense is potent enough with Burrow and Chase and Higgins to get you, a last minute field goal, a last minute touchdown. The Chiefs, while they may be struggling because of the Mahomes injury, and they don't have as much firepower as they used to with like a Tyreek Hill, they've still been putting up points, obviously. Travis Kelce is still a threat, so they can still get these points. I think that you are going to see more field goals than touchdowns in this game, though, from the Chiefs, that is, until it comes down to crunch time. So for all those reasons, give me the under. But again, I'm teasing it. I have the Bengals +7 with the under, and I also have the Chiefs +7 with the under. And I'm getting a final score here of, again, about 27-24, maybe 24-21, depending on how things go. But either way, what we're trying to do is middle that side, as well as get the under on both sides of that play. That's the first play. Like I said, if anything, that's the one I'm probably least confident about. So if you're putting that one, or if you just want to make fun of me later, totally understand. But now on to the play that I am confident with, and this is the one that I have the biggest wager on for the week, and that's the Eagles -2.5. And before you say anything, I realize I am probably on the same side as every other person you've heard this week. And we're all pretty much on the Eagles for very similar reasons, if not the exact same. So number one, you still have Brock Purdy, who it's been a great story. The guy looks good as far as just quarterback talent goes. He's been able to get his team this far. He's got 8 games under his belt and 2 playoff wins. That's awesome. But Shanahan has really made this offense to be kind of a plug and play with quarterbacks, which is great because it works for anybody, right? Whether it's Trey Lance or Garoppolo or Brock Purdy or anybody they want to bring in off the street for that matter. It's a pretty easy schematic offense for quarterbacks. You're making a read pre-snap, you're maybe making some play action plays. As long as you're half-assed mobile and know what the hell you're doing pre-snap, you should be able to run that offense. That being said, though, if and when you are in a spot where you need to not just kind of have your guy manage a game, but you need him to go out there and win the game for you. I have not seen Brock Purdy in that position yet, and I don't think this is where we want to see that spot. You know, to be in the NFC Championship game against an Eagles team who has some experience, not very much, but they do have experience in the playoffs. They have a great team, good coach. They can, play offensively if they need to and get, up tempo and put up 40 plus points, or they can slow it down, run the ball, and just play, defense. So we have two great defensive teams here. Whichever way you want to go, they're pretty versatile as far as what they can do. Now, the 49ers have one glaring weakness on the defensive side of the ball, and that is the secondary. If you go back through their last couple of games and just look at what they've given up in the secondary, it's pretty obvious that they don't have the best corner safety, help back there. Their DVOA numbers are good. Their stats are good on many different factors as far as like the secondary goes, but that is primarily when they are playing and guarding against short passes, over the middle passes, that kind of stuff. They're not really giving up a whole lot. You may catch the ball on a slant or a crosser, but if you do, that's pretty much all you're getting. It's very rare to see, little slant, little in routes taken in the house against this 49ers team. They're pretty good about keeping everything in front of them, and one of the main reasons that they're so good at that is because they have such a good defensive line. When you have a guy like Bosa who's getting pressure on the quarterback, and the quarterback knows he can't just sit back there, for 4, 5, 6 seconds, they start getting that ball out quickly. They're getting out early, and sometimes, especially towards the second half of games, you have guys that are getting rid of that ball just a tick too early, and it costs their offense, right? Sometimes it's a matter of losing the ball, whether it's interceptions, turnover on downs, or having to punt the ball the next play, whatever that is. With the Eagles, you have a mobile quarterback in Jalen Hurts, a team who's willing to let Jalen Hurts run the ball, and who's actually going to most likely tell him you need to run the ball. Whereas like last week with Dak, as somebody who actually is a Cowboys fan, I can tell you the Cowboys, I don't know if it's something they tell him or just maybe something's in Dak's head because of the ankle injury a couple of years ago. He just does not run as much as he should. And if you go back and watch just about any Cowboys game, there's always at least a play or two that he could make with his feet that he just doesn't do for whatever reason. He'll try and make tough passes or, bad passes or throw the ball away or whatever. And it's just, it hurts the team. But this Eagles team is not going to do that, or at least that's not how they have typically been playing. They will let Jalen Hurts make plays with his legs. They're not going to play scared. And Hurts is typically getting, 7 to 10 rushing attempts per game, and this 49ers defense has given up about 4 to 4.5, maybe even 5 yards, depending on which game you're looking at, per rush to the quarterback. And broken plays where the quarterback just finds running lanes, that's actually the most efficient run there is out there, and the highest expected value play there is out there in the NFL, especially if your secondary is not actively watching the quarterback, because then most times you're going to have a linebacker trying to match up with a guy like Jalen Hurts, and that can be an issue. Or even a defensive lineman, unless they're already on him, it's going to be hard for them to catch this guy. That being said, let's just take a look real quick and see some of the numbers that they've given up against their last couple of opponents here. Last week, Cowboys only scored 12 points. 49ers did a good job defensively. CeeDee Lamb, though, 10 catches for 117 yards. The Seahawks game, the game directly before the Cowboys game, obviously, again, only allowed 23 points. So, again, still pretty good defensive showing, especially considering that this is the third matchup they had with the Seahawks this year. DK Metcalf, 10 receptions for 136 yards. Still a pretty big game on that front. And then going back prior to that, they had 2 games against the Raiders, and I forget the other one now, where they weren't playing. Oh, it's the Cardinals, where they weren't playing like the first stringers. So I didn't even bring those up as far as quarterbacks is concerned. I didn't even bring that up into play. The game before that, though, they did play against Washington. Terry McLaurin had 4 receptions for 77 yards. on a team that was really helmed by Wentz when it came down to crunch time in this, and that's a pretty decent day for McLaurin considering that Washington is not that great of an offense and doesn't typically put up a whole lot of numbers. With 77 yards, that's the least of these last 3 games where they actually played, the starting quarterback. You may think, what is the line for A.J. Brown this week as far as receiving yards? Before I show you that, let's just see what has been going on with A.J. Brown. Last week against the Giants, he had 3 receptions for 22 yards. A lot of talk about that, about him not really being happy with what was going on, the amount of looks he got, the yards he got, all that kind of stuff. He had to come out and kind of backtrack it a little bit and all this I'm not a diva crap. But if you look at this year, and if you were watching that game, it was pretty obvious the guy just was not happy with the way that he was being used. Now, obviously, they won the game, so how mad can you really be? But he was not happy with what was going on, and he let Nick Sirianni know, and he made it very evident that he was not happy with that. Now, putting this like squeaky wheel narrative together with that 49ers secondary leads me to believe that they are trying, or they are going to try to get A.J. Brown involved early and often and make him that stress point for the 49ers. Now, the 49ers may know that going into this, and they may decide they're going to try to bracket cover this guy or do whatever they're going to do. But that becomes a lot harder when you look at the rest of this Eagles offense. Obviously, right? They're good. They're in the NFC Championship for a reason. But when you cannot devote all the manpower to one receiver, it becomes a lot more difficult to try and shut him down. Because as soon as you put a second set of eyes on that guy, now you got to worry about Jalen Hurts leaving. And if you're going to put a spy on this guy, now you got to worry about Devonta Smith coming across the middle. So you have a lot of factors here. But the main thing is the 49ers have been willing to let the number one receiver go off on pretty much every team that they've played, at least the last couple of weeks, and say, you know what, you're going to have to beat us with either just your one guy, or you're going to have to get someone else involved, because we're not going to lose like that. And so I do believe A.J. Brown's going to have a big game here. So my favorite play for this week is actually A.J. Brown over receiving yards, and A.J. Brown to score an anytime touchdown. If you want to do first touchdown overall, completely get it. But I do believe that anytime touchdown is the way to go. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and the reason I want to touch on this first before we even get into the actual game portion and decide on this one, is because whether it's Bovada or any other bookmaker for that matter, they all pretty much have the same prop for A.J. Brown, or props plural depending on what you're looking at. Receiving yards about 71 or so. 71 and a half. Receptions, I believe it was 4.5 or 5. 5.5. It was 4.5 previously, so it's gone up actually. And then as far as touchdowns are concerned, I believe he's at plus 120 is what he was at earlier, so plus 129. So it's all pretty similar regardless of what book you're looking at. Not a huge swing one way or the other, but I have found one way to play this that pays the best out of all of these. And if you have access to it, it's actually going to be Prize Picks. And Prize Picks, if you haven't already heard, it's basically like a prop, prop only kind of website. I believe this is probably more widespread than like actual books, like sports books, because it is available in I believe like 30 or 40 states at this point. But the reason I'm saying that this is the best way to play it, even though you have to hit 2 players. If you've never played in Prize Picks before, just know you have to hit 2 props, and they are kind of selective with who you can pick. So you can't do like A.J. Brown yards and then A.J. Brown receptions. It has to be 2 separate players, and I believe depending on when you're getting the plays, it's even like has to be from 2 separate teams or something along those lines. The reason I'm saying this now, though, as far as this is the best payout, is because they are running a promo for this week for the playoffs. Joe Burrow to have 1 yard receiving, right, over a half a yard receiving, as basically your free square. So if you want to take that play, the receiving yards for A.J. Brown is actually lower than most books are concerned. They have it at 69.5 right now. So if you're going to take Joe Burrow to get over half a yard, which again, just let's mark that as a free square, right? He's obviously going to get a half a yard barring some crazy catastrophe setback. If you do this setup and this method, it's 3-1 instead of, minus 110 or minus 120 for the 71 yards that you have to go over with most books, 71.5 or 72.5, and they're paying you minus 110, minus 115. Coming into Price Picks, you get a lower yardage total, and you're going to get 3-1 odds, plus 300, right? And my favorite part about this is that the Joe Burrow promotion or whatever you want to call it is not a one-time use only. I thought it might have been, and so I had to go in and do this before I started the video, but it is not. You can come in here, you can make that play, go back, get Burrow again for another free square, and you're going to have to do these as two separate plays, obviously. So that's the first one, for him to go over receiving yards at 69, but then you can also get him for the anytime touchdown, and it's going to be under the rushing and receiving touchdowns. And here's the kicker. He just has to score a touchdown anytime, obviously, but you're also going to get Brandon Ayuk included in this. Now, they don't have just A.J. Brown to score a touchdown. I've looked, and they don't have it for him, just for him alone. But honestly, why would you take that when you could get two players for the same price? So A.J. Brown to get an anytime touchdown, or Brandon Ayuk to get an anytime touchdown. So you're going to get two players instead of the one. Still, you get the free box with Joe Burrow, and you're still going to get paid out 3-1. So instead of taking the anytime touchdown with A.J. Brown on your sports book, on your regular betting app, go to Price Picks, get the free square with Joe Burrow, and then do the pick that you want and get paid out 3-1 if and when it hits, instead of getting your minus 110 money. Doing it this way also gives you a pretty nice hedge, because in the event that A.J. Brown does not score a touchdown, just the fact that he's going over on the yardage is going to pay for itself, obviously, right? So you're going to get the plus 300 odds, meaning that if you lose on one of them, you're still coming out ahead. Lastly, if you want to do the same thing with receptions, A.J. Brown is at 5 receptions. Now, a push on this one would just be exactly that. If it's just Joe Burrow, and then, let's say in this case, you're doing the receptions at more than 5, a push on the A.J. Brown is going to just give you your money back, basically. But it does still pay out the 3-1. So you could come in, you could use that Joe Burrow free square as many times as you like, take advantage of this as many times as you like, and get that A.J. Brown pretty much every single which way you can, at the best odds possible out there. So that's the pick. Mine in particular are going to be to have him over 69.5 receiving yards, and then again for him to have an anytime touchdown with that free square for Joe Burrow. That's two plays in the one game. I'm also going to take the Eagles to win the first half. Eagles minus 1.5 in the first half. Very similar to what they've been doing pretty much all year long. And I apologize, I did not post this in the videos last week or in anywhere last week, I don't believe. But the Eagles first half minus 4 against the Giants was my favorite play last week. And that was the play I had the most money on last week. And that is because the Eagles have the tendency to come out really, really strong, really hot, and then kind of lay off in the second half and just do what's asked of them. And that has been magical for Sirianni, and that's really what I believe most teams should be doing. By doing that, you kind of give yourself the upper hand. You know more or less what that other team is going to do. If you go into halftime and you're up 1 or 2 scores, you know that other team is going to come out in the second half and they need to be more aggressive. They need to be a little bit more risky. You can just play sound defense, and then when you have the ball, milk the clock, do what you got to do. Just move the ball, just keep the chains moving. You don't need to be as aggressive. You don't need to be as risky yourself. So it kind of plays into your hand on both sides, and that is what the Eagles have decided to do. Now, the 49ers have not come out as aggressive as maybe we would like them to be. Some of that is that they're probably trying to coach around Brock Purdy. And secondly, this has not really been their MO pretty much ever under Kyle Shanahan. He has been more of a ground and pound, we're going to beat you up for 4 quarters kind of guy, and it's working. He's great. He's got great schematics, great running, great everything. But he's just not one of those teams that's going to come out and put up, 24, 27 points in the first half. He's probably going to do something similar to what he did last week against the Cowboys, where it's like, 7 to 10 points. Hopefully go into halftime either tied or with a small lead or just kind of hanging around in there. And then come out in the second half with the understanding that your defense is going to be tired. You're going to give up more runs. You're going to give up bigger, longer runs, more explosive plays, all that kind of stuff. So the Eagles, again, first half, -1.5. That's my second favorite play for the week. And then lastly, the Eagles, -2.5. Earlier in the week, I got them at -2. It's not really a key number anyways. The key number obviously is 3, and that is, if you've been watching this line, why it has not touched 3, and it most likely will not touch 3. I can almost guarantee you the second it gets to San Francisco +3, that money's going to come crashing down and bring that line right back down to 2.5, if not 2. So the Eagles, -2.5 or -2, either one is fine. Obviously 2.5 right now, you're going to get a better odd on that. But the Eagles, just to me, have almost every advantage you can think of. The coaching is probably the one thing I may give to the 49ers, but Sirianni has proven himself very competent, really just an all-out go-getter as far as trying to win these games. He's, not to say any coach is not out there, but this guy, if you saw that clip last week where he's like, I know what the F I'm doing, that's the kind of confidence I want to see from my coach. And I believe both of these guys probably have that. So that's the one spot where I don't give a huge, strong lead to either team. But the Eagles do have the better offensive line. 49ers may have a slightly better defensive line, but I don't think it's substantial enough to really give them the edge. As far as quarterbacks go, Jalen Hurts, better quarterback. Receivers, Debo, I know is great, but he's, to me, not a true quote-unquote, traditional receiver. He's more of like your big body. We might get him some gadget plays, get him to run the ball kind of thing. Brandon Ayuk is a great receiver, great route runner. But the Eagles, with Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, I had to give them the nod on that side as well. So Eagles everywhere on that side. Like I said, defensively, I think maybe the 49ers have, like I said, just a touch better of a defensive line, but the Eagles overall are going to be more sound defense, and the way that they play, that just stylistically helps their defense more so than what the 49ers do when they have the ball offensively. So for all those reasons, give me the Eagles -2.5 for the full game, -1.5 for the first half. A.J. Brown anytime touchdown, A.J. Brown over 69.5 yards. I'm taking all of those on the Eagles. Favorite play is, of course, A.J. Brown over 69.5 yards. And that's it, guys. Those are the plays. That's what I'm looking at. That's what this week's going to be looking at. Hopefully everybody can make some money this week. Like I said, pound that prize picks as much as you can, assuming that you can get those 3-1 odds. Now, I will say I believe that Joe Burrow promo goes away at some point prior to kickoff, so you may want to do that earlier or sooner than later. But thanks again for listening. Again, good luck out there. If there's anything that you think I didn't mention, an angle that you like, whether it's going against my picks or with it or whatever, or even just something totally arbitrary, let us know in the comments, guys. We'd all like to jump on it, obviously. So thanks again. Thank you for your patience. After this week, we'll obviously look for the Super Bowl, and we'll definitely have a video out for that. But thank you again. Good luck.